Hello and welcome to Belgium Spa-Francorchamps for round number 3 of Season 7 of the GT Sprint Challenge live here on RCI TV. Hello everybody, I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck once again with Ryan Mawson captaining the cameras today. And we are in a beautiful setting at one of the world's most prestigious racetracks. Tim Peck, tell me about your favorite moment here at this fantastic facility.
That's a nice way to put me on the spot right at the beginning of the stream, Jesse. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Friday. My favourite moment at Spa. Oh, there's just so many. I will say, though, I think my favourite ever moment at this racetrack, though, is one during the M2 Cup Car Series that we ran here at RCI, when at one point in the wet weather, we had 5 cars going through Eau Rouge at the same time, neck and neck with each other. And it was just the most bewildering sight I think I'd ever seen in my life, because I didn't even know it was possible for 5 cars to be next to each other in this game.
Well, I was going to say there's only one correct answer, and that correct answer is the time that Grim Lilith drove from the back to a podium here is what I was going to go for. Honorable mention for all of the wet weather races in Formula One, perhaps. But all of that aside, we are racing here today. Lovely weather, I think we could all agree. Round number 3 today, Tim, we're going to figure out who our real players are. 2 different races to start the season, 2 completely different results. Today, though, George Boothby looking to make it 2 in a row.
Yeah, and of course Boothby is known for those brilliant results, always being one of the front runners in basically every single race they do, but would not be surprised to see Boothby towards the top again. Currently though, Hugo Morales in the number 13 Ferrari has the top position in practice, and I know it's just practice, not everyone's going their fastest, but it is always nice to see yourself up there at the top of the leaderboard, even if it is just the practice before the race.
That is absolutely the case. I'm having a weird audio issue. I know I sound blown out to everybody at home. I'm going to work on that on the back end. Ryan, please do try and keep up with me. I have figured out that this is a me problem, and we'll deal with that. But for the time being, yeah, there's several drivers that could throw another monkey wrench, a spanner in the works, if you will. But I just wonder, is George Boothby too good around here? He has had some fantastic moments, including a GT Sprint Challenge championship clinching round here in the past. That was 3 or 4 seasons ago, though. What will be in store today? Well, we'll start with qualifying with the end of practice coming up here. What do you reckon we're going to have here, Tim? Land rush start out of the pit lane, and it certainly looks like it.
Oh, 100%. You only have 10 minutes for qualifying here on a Friday, and with a track that takes the best part of 2 minutes to get around, I believe a lap time on average about 2 minutes 16 here in qualifying. You're not getting a lot of laps in. Once you've got your first lap out the way, the out lap, you're probably getting 3 laps at best, maybe 4 if you're lucky and you've timed it right to get that perfect lap timing. So I think this is going to be quite a busy qualifying and probably a huge rush to see who can come out in front, because despite the fact that the weather's nice, there's still things that can go wrong here at Spa. And of course, if you're behind someone who's had an incident, that's going to slow you down. But one thing I will say, Jesse, is this track, probably the easiest to try and find yourself away from someone, put yourself in a bit of your own space, because it's a very long track, and that just means that everyone can split themselves up nicely. You're not all fighting each other for track position.
Yeah, you're not all fighting each other for track position. That's absolutely the case. But one thing that I always found difficult to do in the past is, well, just getting in front of people is not good enough. You can also get stuck behind people as they're waiting extra long in the pit lane. I know I'm giving our broadcaster Ryan Mawson a lot of strife here, Ryan. I'm going to change my audio levels yet again as I haven't properly configured it. I do appreciate everyone bearing with us a little bit here. Little live technical difficulties for you, Tim. I don't know. I've just always found myself getting stuck behind people whenever I'm out on a flying lap. They're coming out of pit lane. It just seems to happen all the time. It's like playing Minesweeper, but for race cars.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, luck kind of comes into that. Obviously, you just need to hope that no one comes out in front of you coming out the pit lane. But, you know, these guys, they're very experienced drivers at this point. There's a lot of people here who have done a lot of races, not just with RCI, but across this track in general. And I think at the end of the day, they know that it's the person coming out the pit lane's responsibility to make sure any cars stuck behind them get through without being held up. Now, of course, that isn't always easy and it's not always the case, but I expect a lot of these people are very well informed to be looking out for that. Obviously, we've got someone now coming into their first flying lap. I think it's their first. It can't have been that long already, but you can see here taking Eau Rouge. And I think this for qualifying is the hardest part to get right, because Eau Rouge, you've got to make sure you go through it as much speed as possible. Ideally, you don't really be lifting off the throttle at all, although some people do, just to make sure they don't go outside the track boundaries. But you don't really want to be lifting because it compromises so much speed. But Jesse, it's so easy to go slightly wide at Eau Rouge and invalidate your lap. And when it's basically one of the first corners, I believe it's corners 2 and 3, if you invalidate it there, you've got to go 2 minutes around the entire track before you have a chance to get a valid lap.
It happens a lot, and one of the things that you do when you go through Eau Rouge, and a lot of times you don't screw up in Eau Rouge, really. You kind of get the feel for it. You try to take as much curb as possible. What you screw up on is trying to get through Radion, trying to get as far back to the right as possible to make sure you don't obviously cut to the left, or even worse than that, lose control, get into the wall. Of course, different cars handle that very differently. Front engine, mid engine, or rear engine determines how you take that, how much throttle you use, and how brave you might also be as well, though that is often dictated by setup of the car. But all that considered, you have a lot of time, like you said, to think about your next move. And what I typically do, because I almost always invalidate lap number 1 in qualifying, I just use that as a learning experience. Well, this lap is thrown away now. It's not going to be valid. Let's try and get as much as we can, learn as much as we can as the tires are coming up to temperature for that second lap.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes these cars do need a couple of laps just to get your tyres into that right spot, because in the GT3s, they have the tyre blankets on until you come out of the pits, and most of the time your tyres can be heated up enough for that first flying lap, but realistically, like you said, the chance of something going wrong is kind of likely to happen, and that just means that by lap 2, your tyres should be in that perfect condition, where the cars are starting to set their first times now. And Fisher, originally on provisional pole, instantly beaten out by Hugo, and Boothby slotting in 2 tenths behind. So the 2 at the top last week, Jesse, back at the top again, but this time it looks like Hugo has a slight speed advantage. So Boothby's going to be looking to try and close up that gap before the end of quali.
Oh, man, it feels good to not be either blown out or too mousy and quiet right now. I like being normal me. I have no idea what happened. Peek behind the curtain, no idea. I've had a lot of audio problems. That was absolutely on me, though. Had no idea that was an issue. And, well, we are good now. But qualifying underway. Hugo, that was your pick, Tim, to be a threat today. And look at that, immediately to the top of the board at 2:16.315, 2 tenths quicker than George Boothby. And that will be the mark to be. Nobody else really close. Jade Hutchinson, though, comes in 2 100ths off of Hugo Merrill's. Hutchinson wasn't a factor last week, Tim. Looking to get back in it this week, though.
Yeah, of course, Hutchinson showed up in that first round at Bathurst, just did an insanely good job and brung home the victory in the end. And Hugo as well. I'd say Hugo was one of the stars for me last week at Suzuka. Didn't take the win in the end, did start on pole, but obviously Boothby got the better end of the first corner. And I think Hugo is one of those people that throughout the championship is going to be one of the main contestants, I'd say, to this pole position and even for the race win in general, because I've not seen a lot of them before coming to this Friday Championship, but they've really stood out to me. And I think Boothby, who is regarded as probably one of the best racers in ACC. I know you say a lot that they might just be the best racer in ACC at the moment. I'd say Hugo looks like someone threatening that.
Absolutely the case. Jardier happened to absolutely miss a car that was abandoning their lap, probably trying to get out of the way of Jaroslav there to give them space. You love-hate that on the racetrack at any given time. A driver trying to give you space, getting out of the way. You want to be predictable above all else. And Jardier, though, has been in the mix since the season started. I think he might be the only driver in the field who has posted back-to-back top fives thus far, and that's just the consistency you expect out of Jardier.
And let's not forget how things ended for Jardier last week as well. Of course, option to not taking a fresh set of tyres in the pit stop allowed them to get just ahead of Hugo, albeit by a couple of seconds, if that. But it just meant they saved that 4 seconds in the pits, Jesse, allowing them to secure second place overall because they managed to bring it home, defended Hugo off for, I believe it was about 20 minutes in the end, and held on to that second place. So that's another thing that we've got to consider today in the pit stops. Of course, a pit stop has to be 26 seconds, I believe, is the rule for the pit stop, but you don't have to do a tyre change in that, which means something that a lot of people regard as common sense is, oh, change your tyres, then you're going to go a bit faster. As Jardier showed last week, it could actually help to not change your tyres just to get that extra bit of track position.
I absolutely thought that they were going to be dead in the water, Jardier, 1 week ago. No way that they were going to hang on when so many of the field actually elected to change tires, but somehow the man, the myth, the legend was able to pull it off, was able to take that P2, and in amazing fashion. We talked to George Boothby after the race. He was surprised that others didn't take tires and how well it worked. Do you put that in your memory bank for later? Certainly you should. Nicholas Keller here pictured for Team Volmont, getting another lap in. That was good enough, a 17.7. That was good for 11th at the time. Has been knocked back one spot. Tim, speak on the importance of qualifying here. It's a really big track. You wouldn't think qualifying is important, but usually it is.
But I'd argue that qualifying is fairly important everywhere. Of course, the higher you start up, the easier it is. You don't have to focus on overtaking anyone. You can just defend and focus on defending. So I'd argue that qualifying is important every track you go to. I'll be interested to hear why you think it's particularly important here, because I will admit I'm one of those people who usually says, with a track this big, it's got a lot of wide space. And I'd argue plenty of overtaking opportunities. I can think of a good 6 or 7 places where you can pull off an overtake here. One of those being the exit of Radulon. If you can get close enough to the car in front of you onto that straight, I mean, you'll just saw right through. But I'm interested to see what your theory is here on why qualifying is so important. Although I would agree that qualifying is important on every single track, just because the higher you start, I mean, it's a bonus at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sort of is, but the reason I put an extra emphasis on qualifying, particularly at Spa, is because if you are around 10th place, you not only are you starting a few seconds behind the leader, you're going to be stuck in traffic, and momentum and pace is so important here. It's not that it's too awfully difficult to make a pass here. It does take some time and preparation, of course, like it does at any circuit, but it's seemingly just that if you're in traffic fighting people, you are losing time hand over fist to the leaders who are not in traffic. And again, you could say that anywhere, but here it just seems like it's magnified. Starting in the mid-pack is almost a death sentence here. You definitely need to start somewhere near the front. Hugo trying to do exactly that, try to improve on their previous lap. They were unable to. Sits at a 16.315. Hutchinson coming to the line just needs about 2 100ths to take the top spot away. What does the Canadian driver have? Not quicker. 3.35. The fastest that pass lap was a 3.95. No improvement there. Not a lot of drivers moving up. Jardier is back in 9th place now. George Boothby, your championship leader, in P3. You can get it done from there. And the resurgence of Valentin Barrier has been fantastic to watch, has come out of nowhere in this championship, has always been a factor inside the top 10, and dare I say the top 5, is trying to do it here today as well. Simonara was one of the first across the line inside the top 5. A couple of cars still left to come through, including Hugo Merrells, who is, of course, trying to take that Jean Alesi Esports Academy Ferrari to a new height. A little bit of breathing room, perhaps, and yes, indeed, a 2.75, and now 6 100ths quicker than Jade Hutchinson. Just a little bit of breathing room there.
I've got to say, I'm slightly surprised of how this qualifying turned out. And I'll be talking about it a little bit more in a minute. Fisher comes across the line, doesn't manage to improve on their time, and here comes Samir Foch, manages to put themselves up into 4th, just ahead of Valentin Barrier. So I've got to say, Jesse, this qualifying has been interesting to watch. I noticed Boothby set their first lap, which was 2 tenths off the lead, decided to not go for another one. They came straight back into the pits after that first lap, and then came out again, do another one lap wonder, and again just couldn't put out a faster time. So whether that's a case of George just tinkering with the setup a bit, trying to find the right spot for the car, seeing if there's any last minute changes they can do to put a bit of speed in it, or maybe just not quite feeling it yet today. I'll be looking to see them increase their pace if they want to bring this victory home for the race win. And I've got to say, George Boothby, I think there's someone that will stand out in the race, but see them starting in third is a little surprising for me.
Very much is. Well, after qualifying, we will show you, as always, the championship points that have led up to this point. Do bear in mind, all drivers get one free drop round, meaning that your worst finish is eliminated from the results. That is tabulated into the standings. After 2 rounds, it is George Boothby all up in front, and he has 68 points. Hutchinson in P2, one race number one, 65 points. Jaroslav Hanzik Jardier in P3, so strong, tied with Garrett Fisher for the final podium spot. Hugo Merrills, who has looked very strong, 57 points, 1 point out of P3, and definitely still in the hunt. Tico Vandervelde has quietly made their way into P6 with 53 points. Valentin Berrier talked about how well they've done thus far, 48 points. Martin Lawrence, P8 with 44 points. Samir Foch in ninth place with 40 points, tied with Vanko Dimitrov.
And here are the rest of the people filling out your top 20. Romain Thomas is in 11th place with 37 points. Behind them, Marco Ripper and Simone Simonara tied with 34 points. That's for 12th place. And for 14th, you've got Jason Dyer, Nicholas Tardioli, and Juna Salvalainen. They all have 31 points and are tied for 14th currently. Going down 17th place, you've got Harry Conway. Just behind them is Oscar Saristo. They're in 18th. Ruta Bellin has 23 points there in 19th, and Jordan Daly rounds out the top 20 for the Friday Championship.
Outside the top 20, these are the drivers scrapping in the mid pack. Sim Smeets with 19. They're tied with Christian Bach for 21st. Pierre Alexander Session, 15 points to their name, tied with Alexander Harbchenko for that spot. You're going to see 1 point behind them. Nicholas Bosselet, Dan Edvardson on 12 points. Schroeder with 10. Justice on 8. Nicholas Keller, 7 points. And Scheckerman with 6 points rounds out your top 30. A lot of drivers, Tim.
There are a lot of drivers competing in this championship, and that means there's a lot of points to go around as well. Well, here are the final drivers in the standings. You got Max Payne. They're in 31st, sorry, with 5 points, tied for 32nd with 4 points. You have Korn Borchers, Paolo Lima, and Malnowski. After a very unfortunate end to round one, they're tied for 32nd place. With 3 points in 35th is Martin Lindrup, and Ashley Richardson has 1 point, and that puts him in 36. Alessio Mellis, Michael Herman Frey, Morgan McCall, and Umut Bozok have 0 points yet to score in this championship.
And of course, outside the top 40, any driver with a 0 in the column is still active in the championship. Anyone with a dash has retired from the championship. Well, a lot of drivers, a lot still in it, and one of the biggest tracks, one of the most noteworthy tracks on the schedule today. Some drivers looking to make hay and make haste here, others just likely looking to survive. Tim Peck tips on surviving Eau Rouge and Radion for lap number one if you are anywhere other than the front row. What do you do?
You ask me this about turn one every single week, Jesse, and every
Well, it's
single
turn
week.
2 this week.
Well, it is turn two this week, but I'm still going to give you the same answer as I would usually for a turn one, which is I'll close my eyes and hope for the best. I won't actually do that, but to be honest, on some of these tracks, it might be a good strategy. But realistically, going into turn two, what can you do if you're in the mid pack? Well, it just comes down to what I always say, which is you've just got to be aware of everyone else who's around you. Make sure that you're not just getting your elbows out. Of course, getting your elbows out is good. You know, you want to stay ahead of as many cars as possible, but you just got to be a bit aware of who's around you. Give them all a bit of space and make sure that you all get through the corner together. Because at the end of the day, if the person next to you isn't getting through the corner, chances are you're not either, Jesse. So a bit of working together I like to see at the beginning of the race, just that everyone survives those first couple of corners. But going back to what you're saying, realistically, a lot of it is just hoping you do not get caught up in that accident that's likely to happen on Eau Rouge. But that being said, it's dry weather, so there's no outside factors which may determine an accident today.
You're right about that, partner. The weather could not be more perfect for the situation, as the cars are released from the grid. One sighting lap, and then we will be going green. Of course, we do technically go green on the GT straight, which means Eau Rouge is turn 1, but according to the track maps, they still count turn 1 as turn 1. So it's one of those rare tracks you actually start out on turn 2. I can only think of a few other courses that are like that. Mid-Ohio comes to mind as well, where most races actually start on the back half of the course. Turns 3 and 4, I believe, are actually the first turns you take under green. But lovely circuit, lovely day for a race. We will get a clearer picture of the championship after today, or will we, is the question. I don't know. It was a very stout qualifying affair. Nothing between the two of them. Certainly it must become about not making a mistake if you're on the front row.
I mean, just look at those cars as they come up the straight. It's such an amazing sight. There's so many as well. You can just see this is already forming up to be a good race, and Hugo starting in that pole position is going to love just having that extra boost. Of course, it didn't work out for them last week, Jesse. They actually got the position taken off them almost instantly by George Boothby, who managed to clear them on the straight just before they got to the first corner. But Hugo will be looking to not have a repeat of that this week. I'm sure they'll be doing some defending as they go through Eau Rouge. And obviously as well, Eau Rouge, they've got Hutchinson directly behind them. Maybe there's a bit of room there for Hugo to just get their elbows out a bit and try not to let anyone through. I was looking at the chat actually earlier, and Michael Redford joined and said, OMG, I need a distraction today. All day has been Monza for the 24-hour, and our teams are all over the place. And that's something that I was going to mention, Jesse, is I believe, do correct me if I'm wrong, it is only 1 week till our RCI 24 hours of Monza.
It sure is, and it's going to be an exciting race there. No broadcast for that race, but it is something that I'll be paying attention to quite closely behind the scenes. I cannot wait for that one. It's going to be an all-timer. 24 hours around the memeiest track in ACC. Could they all survive? There's a lot of cars signed up for that race, Tim Peck. Makes me nervous just looking at the team list. Wish them all the very best of luck. The final week of pre-qualifying and practice for the RCI 24 hours of Monza. That's a nice segue, Tim. I really like that. We're watching the chat as we always are here. Nicholas Keller said earlier, Spa and GT3, it can only be fun, right? Jordan Daly is not optimistic that that's true. He's in the race today, of course. Robert McCall has joined us. Good evening to you, sir, and hello to everyone in South Africa this evening. We hope you're well on your Friday evening, wherever you are in the world, as we get ready to do battle here. 1 hour for round number 3 of season 7 of the GT Sprint Challenge. Lots of races at Spa this weekend. Is it because F1? I would like to think that our involvement here at Spa is coincidental, Gear, but I can't confirm that because I'm a broadcaster and not a race admin. I think it just worked out that way.
Well, I mean, F1 copied us, right?
I am. We don't have the money to be throwing around accusations like that, so I'll not do that. Tom Bryant confirming that it just be like that sometimes. Thank you, Tom, for that. Tom, of course, would know better than I. Tim, nervous drivers here, though, you have to admit, a lot of cars, 25 plus, maybe 30 cars here. It can all go wrong in an instant. A clean start up front is what Hugo wants to get away from Hutchinson and the like, but everybody's going to be trying to make moves here.
Absolutely, and I am just looking at all of these cars currently edging their way towards the front now. I mean, for a top 5 to have these names in it, it is scary. You've got Hugo Morell's up front. You've got Hutchinson in second. Boothby's lurking in third. I believe Foch is in fourth and Barriere in fifth. That is a dangerous front five because all are very talented drivers and all of them are going to be looking to get the jump on the other. I would not be surprised here if there were a couple of moves looking to be made even as we approach Eau Rouge on the start-finish straight, because that's just in the nature of these drivers. They're amazing drivers and they're always looking for that overtake.
You're absolutely right, Tim. One of the biggest innovations, one of the biggest things I've seen over the last several months in ACC are drivers that are working and using the technique of the start. There are several ways you can start these races to get a little bit of a boost, to maybe jockey for position, maybe put yourself in a position to make a pass, and they will all be trying to do that. The biggest evolution in racecraft has been that in ACC recently, as we are green here for race number 3, and it's an excellent start by the Jean Alesi Esports Academy driver as they all fan out, still 2 by 2 for the front row, but just about clears as they go 2 wide for the majority of the field. The top 5 almost figured it out, and look at this, around the outside, thinking about making it work into turn 4, can't quite do it, thinks about getting in line, a little bit of a tap and a spin, one car goes through the black car, trying to get back onto the racetrack, does so without further incident. How many times have we seen that go wrong? Maybe even gains a spot there.
So far, so good at the start. It doesn't look like anyone's in too much trouble. You can see here, Fisher getting there. Elwood's out pushing people to the side as they try and climb through the order, but what a start for Boothby. Slingshotted their way up into that second place. Barriere as well from 5th all the way up into 3rd now turns their attention forwards to, and you can see get Fisher up into 6th here. Just taking a look back at some of the drivers behind them. I mean, what a start for some of these drivers, and I'm sure Hugo, despite holding on to the lead here, is already getting a little bit nervous. But either way, Hugo Morell's, Jesse, for the first time in this particular championship, will be ahead after the first corner, so they're going to be able to do some playing here, see what they can do. And Boothby already a second behind. I'm sure that's just from the chaos of the first couple of corners, but either way, a lovely gap for Hugo just to start playing with and see what they can do.
It was an absolutely fantastic start and excellent circumstances too. Merrills was able to get clear and the fighting was all behind them. It was Boothby, Hutchinson, and Foch and Fisher all fighting it out. That did exactly what we talked about. The thing that I'm worried about, and the reason I think qualifying is so important here, because that's exactly what happened. Those few turns, they were side by side. Hugo was able to gain an entire second on the field. 1.1 second, no longer gaining. Boothby up to P2, Hutchinson in 3rd, Foch in P4, and everybody just about made it work. A couple of crashes. Pretty sure I just saw one coming into the chicane, or actually quite before they got there. A couple of cars off, straggling, several cars already hitting the pit lane, almost certainly due to damage. 25-second minimum stop time in pit lane, and you must take at least 1 liter of fuel while doing that, but you must be stationary for 25 seconds regardless. 5 extra seconds in the pit lane gains you a fresh set of tires. We saw nearly the entire field take them 1 week ago, but the circumstances very different today. Will we see anybody gamble on tires today? I think you certainly will. Jardier up a spot, getting by Valentin Barriere there.
Yeah, I think with the tyres, it's just a case of judging how last week went compared to how you think this week will go. Of course, I'd argue you maybe do want the new fresh set of tyres at Spa. It will probably benefit you here, and I think more likely you will be able to get that overtake off, Jesse. But the other thing that is worth paying attention to today is how many people need to go into the pits more than once. The Spa pit lane notoriously very, very long. You do not want to end up in there unless you need to be, and that is going to play a huge factor today, because we've seen in both races so far, Stuka and Bathurst, there have been a couple of extra trips down that pit lane due to damage caused by incidents and a bit of crashing. But you're not going to want that today. You are going to absolutely want to stay out of trouble for as long as possible. You don't want to be going in that pit lane twice, and you can actually already see a couple of cars had to go into the pits already. I think 2 of them may be in the pits to repair damage or have a pit stop. I think one of them has just returned from the middle of the track. But either way, Jesse, an early pit stop this early you're going to start to struggle later on the race, and it's not how you want to be starting.
Certainly is so. Vanko Dimitrov here trying to get a position away from Alessio Mellis. Morgan McCall, the South African, finds themselves in a precarious position. Do you try to overtake the overtaking car or not? Martin Lawrence behind him would very much like an opportunity all of his own to get it done. Dimitrov, though, doing the smart thing, not quite able to make the move, hasn't made the move. Jardier is making absolutely no friends on his way to the front. A huge move down into one, gets by Garrett Fisher there.
And that's what Jardier needs to do. They just need some climbing now, don't they? They had a rather rough qualifying, found themselves, I believe, in 9th place, which isn't where you'd have expected to have seen Jardier, especially after last week's performance, but manages to get themselves up now. I believe they're in 5th. They've just pushed their way up into 5th. They're slightly behind. I think it was a gap of 2 seconds. Yes, it was to Foch. They're going to want to close that now, Jesse, as quickly as possible, because they need to get back into that fight at the front. And I think Jardier could be for a great result here if they can close the gap to Foch. So we'll see how they manage to continue. George Boothby, though, 1.2 seconds behind Hugo, has Hutchinson, currently the fastest car on the track, looking for a way to overtake them. You can see Hutchinson ever so close to the rear of Boothby through those corners there. And I gotta say, George Boothby doesn't look like they've warmed up to their top form yet, and Hugo is just getting away with it. They're starting to push that gap, albeit a 100th at a time, but it's still pushing the gap further.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where you got to make very smart moves, and Jardier trending in the right direction. George Boothby, of course, isn't really losing time to Hugo out front, leading by 1.4 seconds. The gap ever so slightly going up. It fluctuates depending on what sector they're in, which is quite interesting, I find, considering they're both in Ferrari 488s. But beside that, this man that you're looking at right here, this is the rear wing of George Boothby. Looking back at Hutchinson, they lost a spot there on the start. They would be absolutely livid with that. Got swamped and overtaken. You got to be wary of that, but still a lot of pace in that car. That Honda might be a looker here.
And it's interesting to see, because we were discussing this Honda right back in race 1 at Bathurst. As you can see, Hutchinson now really closing up the gap to Boothby. Has a great pull from the slipstream, always neck and neck going into the first corner, but will have to take it on the outside. They're going to tuck in behind Boothby here and hope they get that slipstream again down towards Eau Rouge, but not looking like it's quite enough yet. They're going to meet them basically at the start of Eau Rouge, Jesse, and this is where it's going to get very tight. Hutchinson needs to think about this strategically here as they're coming out of Eau Rouge into Radillon. You can see both of them taking it, but Hutchinson going to get a huge pull down the straight. Surely, if they can get the slipstream right here, Boothby won't be able to defend.
Keep in mind, there was a BOP update in the recent days. Things are different than they would have been otherwise, unless I'm corrected by that by a race controller. I'm pretty sure the current BOP applies to this series. I could be wrong about that, but I do feel like that is the case. Look at this. Jordan Daly making a heck of a move. Takes to the grass around the outside, trying to get position on the 31 of Dyer. Didn't quite get that taken care of, but what an aggressive move, showing intent from the Triple R driver.
And Daly is one of those drivers that just goes for every single spot available for them. They're a great believer in that if a gap exists, you have to go for it. And that is just what Daly is known for me. One of those mid-pack fighters who is constantly pushing to climb higher. And I love it, Jesse, when these drivers find new innovative ways. They're trying to take around the outside the corner. It's not necessarily always going to work, but it's definitely worth going for. Martin Lawrence, another one of those drivers as well, had a very good week last week as they ended up securing driver of the day. But Martin Lawrence and the Audi now, you can see, just trying to put themselves into that top 10, is coming up to the rear of the Mercedes of Martin Cole.
Something else to consider, George Boothby might have damage. Our broadcaster Ryan Mawson has told us they were involved in a little bit of a scuffle early. Remember, they were 2x2 up the Kimmel Straight. It's possible that he has a little bit of damage, and that's what's slowing him down. Hugo Merrils has found the pace and is driving away. That could be why the gap is fluctuating. Could be why the gap's going out. Well spotted by our fantastic broadcaster. Silent broadcaster today. Could have been with us in the booth on comms, but of course electing to not be. But of course you can hear the sultry tones of one Ryan Mawson tomorrow during the SRO broadcast. And, well, what a race we've had so far. First 10 minutes, time to exhale. 10 minutes have gone by. Merrill's out in front. Boothby being hounded by this man, Hutchinson, trying to get the spot there. And you see a lot of drivers use that inside curve at the top of Radion tactically. And you saw it used in two different ways there. Boothby trying to maximize speed. Hutchinson trying to undercut and get down to the inside. It hasn't worked out. The Ferrari just a little bit too stout down the front straight. And Hutchinson here also finds themselves in a precarious position. Samir Foch right behind them. That's the, what do you call that, maroon and white Ferrari in the rear view camera of Hutchinson's car. And remind me, Samir Foch, he'll let you back in line, right, if you accidentally have a little bit of a slip up, right?
Oh, 100%. Such a kind-hearted driver like that. Just, no, absolutely not. Samir Foch will take that position and defend it with their life. It doesn't matter how they get it, they are going to take it. I'm sure that's the case with most of the drivers here. Looking into chat, Dr. Glock, Father Boothby, has come in and said George only has 1 second damage but is losing time defending. And that's what I was about to mention, Jesse, is that Hutchinson absolutely flying around the track here. Must be putting so much pressure on Boothby to defend, and you can see that Boothby is losing now quite a lot of time across the lap, as it's just gone to 2 seconds off the lead, the gap for Boothby. And I've got to say, Hutchinson's putting on so much pressure right now, and Father Boothby in the chat giving us the information that it's only 1 second of damage, but still, Jesse, 1 second can affect the car, but most likely this is from the defending here.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of column A, column B, I would say, and even if it isn't affecting the car in a physical way, it affects you mentally, because you know there's been contact and you know that there's something amiss with the car, and then all of a sudden the handling doesn't change a lot of times, but you feel it changes because you're driving different, because you know you have the damage. A lot of racing is psychological after all, but no matter what it is, he is definitely losing time defending. Might be a little bit of aero depending on what part of the car it is. Certain cars are more susceptible to different kinds of damage as well. It is a long list of things. We could go down that rabbit hole, but hello to Father Digby this evening. And I love the comment from Carlos earlier. This isn't iRacing, Jordan. I believe they were referencing the driving in the grass around Spa. Well, I have nothing interesting to say about that. I'll move on. Carlos, I chuckled at that privately. I just wanted you to know. Wouter Billen, though, the wee shite 183 inside the top 15. Talk about a driver who has lived in the midfield thus far. Billen has done a fantastic job, has given us some excellent shots, including this one. That's Lindrup they're trying to pass around the outside. You can pull this off as long as you're far enough beside, and I think you might see this here. Billen forcing Lindrup down to the inside of the curve. That's exactly what you want to do. You got to do and win the battle here as well. He's done that. Billen, oh no, and it's a big crash. Lindrup has gone around, several cars involved. Martin Lindrup stranded on the outside curve. Cars continuing to come, waved yellow flags. What happened here?
Oh no, that is not what you want to happen. I think Lindrup
was
slightly
that Dyer?
Dyer? That hit Lindrup afterwards? I think it might have been Dyer.
That was Dyer.
It was, that crashed into them afterwards, but either way, Lindrup hitting Billen slightly there on the side as Billen was going round the outside of the corner. That's going to throw them off course, and you saw just enter the wall there. Not how Lindrup would have wanted that to go, because that's going to be a very, very costly pit stop. Now, I don't believe they've not. Lindrup hasn't pitted yet, Jesse. That means they can now opt into finishing that damage now, just make sure it's all fixed. Change your tyres while you're at it if you're going to, do the refuel and take that mandatory pit stop. But either way, it's going to be fixing that damage. It's going to take a bit of time, and it means Lindrup will drop through the field. But I'm just wondering here, pitting this early, we're about 14 minutes into the race. They're going to come out behind everyone else. It's going to give them a lot of clean air to just put out some fast laps and hopefully just try and push themselves higher up this order. Maybe climb some positions back towards where they originally were.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dyer got the worst of that. Had absolutely nowhere to go. A car sideways in front of them on the apex, the outside apex. No. And just absolutely crunched. What happened here? This is the battle for P2. Hutchinson down to the inside for turn one. Is this easy peasy lemon squeezy? I think it is. Does Boothby have any retort to that? Not quite. An excellent pass by the Canadian back up to P2, but George Boothby is not done yet. Look at him on the back of Jade Hutchinson.
Boothby finally taken by Hutchinson. I mean, Hutchinson is just flying around the track right now, and I think Boothby will be definitely able to bring this battle back to Hutchinson. Of course, Boothby, one of the best drivers in ACC sim racing right now, will absolutely fight for that second position back, but Hutchinson just has so much speed, Jesse, since the start of this race. They've been putting out some really fast laps, although that being said, Hugo Morels, currently sitting in that first place position, has just set the fastest lap as well, has a 2.3 second gap to Hutchinson. I mean, so far for Hugo, this has been a perfect first 15 minutes.
I don't know what Hugo's personality is. I've never met the man, but I will say that if I were him, I'd be rubbing my hands together right now in glee. Everybody else behind him fighting. This is a perfect day. You've just got to finish it off now. He's got to be very focused for the next 45 minutes. He's got to nail the pit stop, and I think he might be your winner. And remember when I said we might have a consensus of who's going to be the top dog? If Hugo wins, I don't think that's going to be the case. Boothby still fighting for P2, but back in the field, Samir Foch also trying to get a spot and move up to a podium spot. Foch trying to continue his fantastic season thus far. None of these drivers, in my opinion, in the top however many you like, are out of the championship in any way, shape, or form. A reversal of fortune today could go a long way in determining a champion. I don't think we are going to get that clear picture, as I said a moment ago. I love Foch's team name, though, the Ferrari Enjoyers 88 Ferrari 488 Italia. And what a lovely car that is. And I'm a Ferrari enjoyer myself, as it turns out. And, well, Ferrari is enjoying 3 out of the top 4 spots right now.
Father Digby coming in with some intel for us. So Digby gave it up to Chase Hugo. For those of you who don't know who Digby is, that is our nickname for George Boothby, which means that the overtake you saw there with Hutchinson going down the inside and George not fighting back, that was because Boothby let Hutchinson through. And honestly, Jesse, I think that's a very smart and a great tactical choice for Boothby here. I mean, I was going to mention it is that I've done a little bit of the math. I know that's your job. I do apologise for taking it from you. But if Hugo finishes this race with the fastest lap and in that first place slot, they will be in the lead of the championship by, I think, about 6, maybe only 4 points. But they will be ahead of Boothby if Boothby finishes in third. So really here, Boothby's goal is just to try and beat Hugo. They don't have to beat Hutchinson because Hutchinson isn't directly in that fight for first yet, but they do need to make sure they beat Hugo. So ducking in behind Hutchinson, who is currently flying around the track significantly faster than them, could be the best idea George has right now, just to bring the fight back to Hugo.
I love the tactics that you see in races like this. We saw it a week ago with Jardier not taking tires, figuring that he could challenge for a win, and very nearly did late into that race. And this is the ultimate challenge here of letting a car go, hoping that they're able to catch the leader and drag them all back. They're only 2 some seconds back, and it would only take about a lap of battling before that would happen. The tactics, the stream of consciousness, and the wherewithal you have to make moves like that. Speaking of making moves, Valentin Berrier up the inside of Jardier for P5. Remember, this pass was going the opposite direction at the beginning of this race. Now 19 and a half minutes in, looks like Berrier has found a little something extra in that car. Down to the inside, he might just have this. Will he clear Jardier? Yes, he will. Excellent battle. A lot of respect right there. The tolerances weren't big, but it didn't matter. They were able to get that done clean.
And these two, I expect, will be battling now till the end of the race. Both Berrier and Jardier, 2 amazing fighters, and are both contenders for that front part of the field, Jesse. And I was going to go back to what you said earlier, which is there's a lot of people at the front of the field right now that are still definitely in contention for the championship. I absolutely agree with that statement, as Foch actually picks up a 5-second penalty. Something we've not mentioned yet is that this series is live stewarded. So stewards are currently watching this race live. They're taking into account any incidents that happen, and they will be handing out penalties based on those incidents. Thank you to all of our stewards who helped with that. But going back to what I was saying, Jesse, I'd argue that the top 7, maybe even the top 10, could still take home the championship victory. It depends on how this race goes, of course, because this is the middle race of the championship. But all of those drivers in the top 10, huge names that I would be happy betting at least some money on in these races, because there's absolutely no discounting any of them.
No, it certainly is. It's been all over the place this season thus far. Nobody grabbing the proverbial bull by the horns, and today it could go Hugo's way. Of course, Hugo is one of those illustrious champions. He's won one of these championships before, but then again, so is George Boothby. I think Samir Foch has won a championship in one of our weekly series as well.
Yep.
A lot of big name drivers up at the front all know what it means and what it's like to win. They all know the different tactics. In any given weekend, you can have any number of different winners. That's why I love racing so much.
Oh, 100%. And it's why I love this championship in particular. You've got so many big names here. I mean, a lot of these I recognize from the Thursday championship, which I used to commentate, Jesse, and they're all big names there as well, and it's amazing to watch. I love it so much when you get all of the big names into one split and watch them all battle it out, because like we've said several times, it can go literally any way. I mean, there's some extra knowledge you get having watched a lot of these races on how the race might go. Like we both said that we know Boothby's going to do well. We both put money on Barriere doing well as well, but at the end of the day, it really could go any way. And I think Hugo Morales is the perfect example of this. We're just going to have a race replay here of Samir Foch approaching. Is this Boothby? I believe it is Boothby going over Radulon, just losing it a little bit there, managing to catch it though before they put it into the wall. So a good recovery from Foch. But going back to what I was saying, I think Hugo is a perfect example, Jesse, of how you can predict how these things go to a certain extent, but there's never a way you can fully predict racing. I mean, Hugo has had a dream start to this race. They had first places. Romain Thomas here having to do a bit of overtaking, trying to go around the outside of Marco Ripper, manages to pull it off, and that is Thomas ahead of Marco Ripper, going round the outside of the corner there, and it looks like Marco having to close the gap back up, just trying to keep behind. But again, going back to what I was saying, Jesse, about Hugo, had a brilliant start to the race, started on pole, is still in the lead, has almost 3 seconds now of distance to P2, really pulling out of the bag, and definitely one of the names I'd say would be towards the top, but I'd have considered a lot more resistance by now. But because of all the incidents that happened at the beginning, Hugo has had that extra boost and really showcasing what they can do today.
Clean air is worth a ton. I do apologize. Did you go over the stewarding report that we had received, or?
No, I've not done the report. I just said that they've got the 5-second penalty.
Excellent. Well, in that case, here we go, folks. Welcome in our live stewards for the very first time. Grim Lilith handing me the slips of paper, as he has been doing all season long. And buckle up, kids. We got a lot of them here. Warning for car 97 for avoidable contact on lap 1. 5-second penalty for car 77 for not holding brakes and causing contact.
Hang
car
on,
77
Jesse, we may have an overtake happening up front here. Edvardsen going for a move on Jordan Daly. Slight contact. Pushes Jordan Daly off the track. He's going to stop back in. No! Trying to get into the fight as well. That's pushed Edvardsen off the track completely. They're going to cut the chicane to rejoin, and it looks like Daly just about survived that. Will try and stay away from Session, but Session they're going to benefit the most, puts themselves up into 16th, and Jordan Daly survives, and it looks like Edvardsen going to be out of the fight for a while now.
Oh my goodness, I do apologize for my sharp reaction, but that was unfortunate, and you could see it coming a mile away, folks, and it absolutely happened, but there's still 2x2 for that position. Jordan Daly somehow coming out the winner of all that, if you really want to call it that. 3 wide, 3-1 doesn't go, as Ryan Mawson would say most of the time, as they've just about sorted it out. And when I say just about, I mean that in every sense of the word. As I was saying, a 5-second penalty for car 77 for not holding brakes and causing contact. The 77 has retired. Racing incident between the 180, the 65, and the 77. A racing incident between the 726, the 72, and the 800.
Hang on, Jesse, we've got a
here?
race replay. I believe this is Session taking the place back but missing the corner. Means Daly will be able to just cut in ahead, as you can see Session here, trying to rejoin the track, and with the bumps and just making sure they're slow enough to not gain the advantage, Daly will re-slot back into 16th, but Session putting a lot of pressure on Daly.
Sure is, and that's how you have to race around here. You have to keep the pressure on, because if they make a little bit of a mistake, keep in mind, there's no such thing as a small mistake here. You mess a corner up here, you're losing tenths of a second, not thousandths, and you have to be in the position to get by them in that case. And I'm pretty sure last time we came through here 3 wide a lap ago, that's exactly what set that 3 wide mess up. 5-second penalty for car 88 for an excessive contact with overtake, that back on lap 1 as well. 5-second penalty for car 271, not leaving space for car 97, forcing them off track. Car 271 has retired from the race. Warning for car 44 for avoidable contact on car 171. A drive-through penalty assessed for car 65 for making contact with car 271, causing loss of control. Car 65 retired from the session. Time penalty has been given.
There's a bit of a mix-up here in Session. Again, went off track at the chicane. We're going to have a race replay, see what happened. I think someone may have actually been pitting, which may have been one reason I got so excited. But we'll see Session on the outside. Someone else makes a dive for the inside, always hitting Daly. They park in the middle of the track, letting through another car, and they were trying to get into the pit lane as well. So big calamity on that final chicane there, but all cars managing to navigate it in the end without an incident. But either way, being that exposed to the middle of the track, Jesse, is always a nerve-wracking place to be in.
It's gone a bit scruffy in the middle part of this race, if I'm honest, Tim. I got to say,
always when you're reading out the penalties.
I just think the drivers are starting to lose their edge just a little bit, maybe starting to lose the tires. A couple of dives down into the braking zone, way deep in there, and then, of course, contact and then contact again. And, well, the stewards are definitely going to have to sort all that out. They had just about caught up on the reports for the day, and then all that kicked off. Hats off to them, and my heart goes out to them. That is a lot to sift through in the last couple of laps. Continuing the penalty report here, racing incident between the 39 and the 78, racing incident between the 197 and the 31, 5-second penalty for car 9. Let's see, it's a long report, I'm just going to read it out. Incident between cars 9 and 183, deemed a racing incident, as car 9 understeers into them and takes them out. The 31 has an unavoidable contact with the car spinning, car number 9, and is also deemed to be a racing incident. The 5-second penalty is deemed for car 9 for a poor rejoin, forcing the 911 and the 75 into avoidable action. So a lot going on with that lap 6, turn 7 incident, but the 5-second penalty, of course, for a poor rejoin. Racing incident between the 726 and the 800, racing incident between the 911 and the 75, racing incident between the 72 and the 39, racing incident between the 97 and the 197, racing incident between the 72 and the 39. And I hear the stewards rustling papers. They must be looking at the last couple of laps. Wow.
Well, as you come to the end of that, Jesse, it's perfect timing. Hugo Morales, the race leader, has pitted for their pit stop of the race. You only have to pit once here. It's a mandatory pit stop. It has to be 25 seconds long. As long as it's 25 seconds long, it doesn't matter what you do. You can sit there twiddling your thumbs if you like, but most will use it as a chance to refuel, and some will even use it to change tyres. And I'm wondering what Hugo does here. If I was any of these drivers right now, Jesse, I'm changing tyres. It's Spa. I don't want to risk anything. I don't care if that 5 seconds can give me advantage like it did with Jardier last week. I need that fresh set of tyres to ensure I can get to the end of this race, and I'm sure that they won't be held up like Hugo was last time. But I'm interested to know your theory. What was your pit stop tactic here? Are you pitting just before the 30-minute mark? Are you waiting a little bit and pushing your stint a bit longer? Are you changing tyres or not? What are your thoughts on the pit stops here, Jesse?
Oh, I'm absolutely coming in as close to the midway point as possible. In a perfect world, I'll get there at exactly the halfway point, but this is a long racetrack, isn't it? So that often isn't the case. You either usually come in right before or right after, but you want to get as close as possible. And I'm as a driver, you're offering me tires, I'm going to take them. I don't care how long I'm there. I could be there for 5 hours. I want tires. So I'm probably taking tires. I think you'll see a mix of people doing that. I would, if I was Hugo, I think it's a more difficult decision because if you were not far enough ahead, okay, to take tires. So I think his strategy might have been forced. I don't know if I would have been brave enough to take tires if I was former leader of this race, Hugo Merrill's. I might have risked not taking them just on the off chance one of my nearest competitors, who are less than 5 seconds behind me, didn't take tires and they jumped me. I don't think he could. I think a lot of drivers will. I think you'll see several in the top 5 who take that gamble trying to run down this driver at the end of the race.
Well, of course, we're monitoring how quick the pit stops are here, Jesse, to see if we can guess who has taken tyres or not. And Mawson, our broadcaster, has said that Hugo's stop was a 1:54, Barrier's was a 1:54, and Samir's was 2 minutes. Now, of course, Samir may have just gone into it slowly, but here's the thing. With Barrier going a little bit quicker, I'd argue that maybe... Oh no, hang on. Like Mawson just pointed out, actually, Foch had the penalty, so never mind. It looks like they will have taken the new set of tyres. The only thing I was wondering though is Barrier, one of the cars last week to not take the fresh set, may have been trying that again, but probably isn't based on the rest of the information we have available. But then looking at it as well, Hugo Morales last week, they took the fresh set of tyres. They are the car that Jardier beat into that second place position because Jardier didn't take the fresh set of tyres. And like you were saying, they're in the lead at the moment. I'm sure they are not going to risk not taking that fresh set of tyres, especially since they had about 3-4 seconds to play with before they went into the pits. But either way, Jesse, I think there may be a bit of shaking there for Hugo, probably a bit shaken up after last week's events of how that was how Jardier got the jump of them, that may have them thinking, perhaps not this race, but in the future, do I need to change these tyres, or will I benefit more from the extra 5 seconds out on track? Well, we're going to find out. It looks like Hutchinson is just leaving the pits now. Hutchinson was the car that was directly behind Hugo going into the pits. We're going to find out if Hugo can clear them, and I'm imagining from where they all are on the track right now, Jesse, that Hugo is going to still be clear of Hutchinson. You can see Hutchinson still just exiting the pit lane in the runoff of the pits here, and Hugo is completely clear. So, well, Hugo's done what they've done. They just need to stay in the lead, and that is what they are doing, Jesse. Hugo Morales was our leader of the race going into the pits and will be the leader of the race once everyone has done their pit stop as well.
One more penalty report to report on. Warning for car 180 for forcing the 197 off the track. Position returned, and that was the issue we saw earlier on, right before the 3 wide situation. So now I can't wait to see what they say about the 3 wide situation and how that all sorted out. One driver getting, what are we going to call it? We'll call it ejected from the racing surface. Quite a usual thing that happened there. I remember at the Spa 24 some years ago, an Audi getting ejected from the track in a very similar manner, almost uncanny, into the what you would call the outside wall. Massive damage to that car. And, well, life imitates art, I suppose, on that account. Most of the drivers, Tim, did come in around the halfway point. The final few cars are coming in. Quite curious what George Boothby will do in the pit lane and what this pit stop will look like for them, because, again, we know they have the 1 second of damage self-reported by Father Boothby. Will they fix that? Is that a big issue? Will they take tires? Will they be contrarian on the strategy? This is what makes racing so good.
It's interesting to think what Boothby may do here. I personally, I'm not fixing that damage. 1 second probably isn't affecting the speed of the car. I think realistically Boothby's just struggling to get into the zone today, which is something you usually say about Boothby, but I've got to admit, I feel like Hutchinson and Hugo have stood out a lot on track, whereas Boothby definitely has stood out on the track, but I feel like they've got that more pace there. I'm looking at Garrett Fisher right now. I don't remember seeing an incident involving Fisher, certainly not one that warrants to stop and go for 30 seconds, Jesse, so that's likely handed to them by the game for speeding in the pit lane. That probably means that they either it means they most likely accelerated into the pit, didn't slow down enough as they entered it in the game, just handed them a 30-second stop and go on the spot. I mean, there's ways to end your race at Spa, and there are ways to end your race at Spa, but stop and go for 30 seconds, that's going to end your race at Spa.
Yeah, stop go 30. It is possible to get awarded a stop go 30 by the stewards. It's incredibly rare. I've only seen it about 5 times in the entire history of RCI. What do you have to do to get a stop go 30 by the stewards? Well, folks, you're going to have to go bowling and nearly knock down a strike to get that. And even more so, you're probably going to have to do that on the first lap. Otherwise, it'll probably be a lesser stop and go. Again, it's only happened a few times, and it hasn't happened. Oh dear, I'm going to curse everybody here. It hasn't happened in recent memory, so at least back till the winter of 2022 would be probably the last time I've ever seen one handed out for anything. Of course,
We've
the
not
ACC.
had that winter yet. Sorry, that's just me being annoying.
The winter,
Jesse, it is 2022.
No.
Oh, at the beginning of the year, of course, January.
I'm gonna let you sit there, and I'm gonna let you think about what you've just done. But Garrett Fisher, the stop and go 30, very clearly for speeding in the pit lane, and ACC doesn't have any chill, as the kids would say, and they will not allow you to get away with any speeding of any kind. And it's all about where the lines start and stop. So easy to be on the limiter at the wrong time. So easy to be in the wrong gear and think that you're on the limiter as well. Most cars, the pit lane limiter only engages in the first gear, which is something you always have to pay attention to. Very close, minute details. I was talking about Hugo Merrill's earlier not making mistakes in pit road and how likely that is. Well, there you go. Garrett Fisher was running inside the top 10 and now has a stop and go, and they have to serve that within 3 laps of receiving that penalty. Will the Pulse Sim Sport driver serve it this time? I don't know. Saristo leading the race at the time. Alessio Mellis, Thomas, and Scheckerman all in the pit lane. That should promote Hugo back up to P2 for the time being, as Saristo has yet to pit and is the only driver left not pitting. The Carbon Fox Racing 97 there, out in front of the field.
Oh, I'm still sitting in my corner of shame over here, Jesse, but just looking at where everyone is on the track right now, and going back to what we were saying about Garrett Fisher as well, that stop and go 30 seconds, and just what we were saying at the beginning of the race, these drivers so experienced, definitely I'd say the faces of RCI drivers at this point, like the ones that show up to a lot of our championships, the ones that are known for doing well in our races. Fisher, unlikely to make mistakes, and this is probably a one-off. Maybe once a year, probably once every few months for them. I don't think I've ever seen, in all the time I've watched Fisher, and they have been a regular in basically every single championship I've commentated, I don't think I've ever seen a stop and go 30 seconds from speeding in the pit lane. So a rare mistake for Fisher, but a very costly one that is going to damage their points in this race. In fact, if they serve that stop and go 30 seconds, which they're going to have to, it is going to put them right at the back unless anyone else also has an incident like that, which means they have to pit again. But either way, at this point, if you're one of those people that has a 5-second penalty, if you get a time penalty, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, hey, even 20 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, just keep it till the end of the race at this point. If you've already pitted, it's not worth going into this pit lane at Spa. It's so long. You're going to lose basically every position that you have gained. So anyone now getting a drive-through or a stop-and-go, Jesse, those are the penalties that will hurt the most, because those are the ones you have to serve within 3 laps. And I've got to say, it's not the ideal situation for Garrett Fisher there. And it's so unfortunate as well, because they've struggled at the beginning of the championship just to find their footing a bit. I know I've seen that Mercedes sort of floating around in that top 10, but more so towards the bottom of it, which is not somewhere I put Fisher in particular, but really struggling to get into this sort of rhythm has Fisher been over the last few races. And it seems like they just found their footing at the beginning of this race, and now to have that stop and go 30, it's really going to damage their championship. And you can see they're coming in now to serve it as well. We'll make sure they're not speeding in this time, because another stop and go 30 seconds, that would not be very pleasant at all.
Well, I was trying to figure out how far down the list they're going to fall, and I have been doing the math, as you might expect, and they're going to fall outside the top 20. They won't go to the complete back, but they
Will they
will be
not?
very. No, they won't. They won't quite make it all the way back there, I don't think.
Wow.
But it will be very nearly so. Christian Bach in the Lone Nissan GTR, a fan favorite, of course. The first time we've mentioned them today, the GTR not faring as well here as it had done the first 2 rounds of the championship. 21st place is Bach's 114, but just made a pass right there for 21st spot. Schroeder now back 1 more position. By the way, you may have also noticed we panned the camera around to the 71 of Richardson. They had a drive-through penalty. That, of course, also was for speeding in the pit lane. And you may be wondering, hang on, Fisher got a stop go 30 for doing that. And yes, remember earlier when I said ACC doesn't have any chill, it assigns you a speeding penalty based on the severity of how much you sped, and that lets you know that Richardson's penalty was minor speeding, and Fisher's speeding must have been egregious, according to the sim.
Wait, is that how it works? I always thought the
It
driver would
absolutely
if you
is.
cross the line on pit exit, but I guess not.
I mean, it also could have been that. You're absolutely
Okay,
right. It could
okay,
have
fair
also
enough.
been that.
That's
But
the
I don't know.
It is good. It's learning.
But I
I'm
don't
learning
know
about
how you
driving.
cross the line here. That is true of most tracks, but I'm not sure how you would do that here. That's why I didn't bring it up, because
Oh, because
there's a
there's
wall
the
there.
barrier. Yeah, there's a whole wall going all the way up the line. You're right.
I'm not saying it's impossible,
Hey,
because it isn't impossible. It's sim racing. It's very possible, Tim, but
I'm not
I-
disagreeing with you. I'm going
I
to
have
check it
no-
later to confirm that fact. But hey,
you're absolutely right. And now you've made me question: is it possible here to cross the line? Because you absolutely can technically do it, but is it that anal that it won't allow you to touch the line here? I wonder.
well, we'll have to go and see. Now, something else I was actually wondering about there, whilst you were just talking away, Jesse, is that George Boothby currently 1.7 seconds behind Hutchinson. I was like, there is no way Boothby is 1.7 seconds down on Hutchinson. They can't have lost that much time, right? And I'm not entirely wrong. Father Boothby has confirmed in the chat that Digby himself loves his repaired Ferrari. Now, that means that Boothby did repair the 1 second damage they have on them, which I think is an interesting choice, but it is the driver's choice at the end of the day. And it means that clearly they felt like it was worth fixing at this point to give them that bit of extra speed, which means I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it. He's one of my favourite drivers. I'm expecting him to fly up the field now. If he thinks that 1 second damage that he's had since the beginning was worth fixing, I want to see him at the lead of this race before the end.
Alessio Mella still involved, racing hard for a top 10 spot, continuing to try and move forward. It will lose a spot right there. I believe that was Simonara that was actually able to get around them. So the number 12 up 1 spot, Bosch in P6. So just barely fell out of the top 5 after a 5-second additional penalty on the early part of the race, but still an incredible position thus far. Jardier back down to P5, or should I say back up to P5, of course, because Verrier took the top 5 spot because of Foch's penalty, though. They all jumped them in the line. Merrills enjoys a 3.7 second lead on Hutchinson, and Boothby back in 3rd place, though, not too far behind, 1.4 seconds to gap to P2. You never can tell how pivotal and important these finishes could be. The difference between 1st and 2nd place in the points is only a handful of points, and that's the exact amount of points you get. Difference between finishing 3rd and 2nd. It all comes back in the end. It's all completely relevant. And yes, we have had championships end on a tie, and they revert back to countback. So you got to fight. And Boothby is going in the right direction, by the way. Gained a 10th in the sector on Hutchinson. We're watching Saristo here fighting Jordan Daly for P14. Daly must have had an excellent stop. Mind you, that driver was either 15th or 16th. And after the pit stop, the 197, the Triple R car, up into P14. Saristo wants that spot back, though.
So looking towards the outside to try and find Daly. Daly, though, going to hold on to the defence and will be able to stay ahead of Saristo as they approach this final chicane. Will Saristo make a move? Probably not. No, they're nowhere near close enough to go for the inside overtake, and they will have to wait behind Daly until they get another chance. Going back to what you were saying about Boothby, what I was saying about Boothby as well, and what Father Boothby has been saying in the chat. Father Boothby has confirmed that it's been 2 purples in a row for Boothby, and it has been Boothby. I said I wanted them to turn up the pressure, and they have turned up the pressure. They've been absolutely flying out on the track, so maybe that fixed damage and a fresh set of tyres is exactly what they needed. Get Fisher here after their stop and go 30 seconds, climbing back through the order. This is them overtaking Schroeder, coming around the outside of the corners, and they will be through just before we get onto that final little bit of straight before the final chicane, Jesse. So Get Fisher didn't appear in dead last, but will be down the order. They found themselves in 22nd. They've got a lot of climbing to do if they want to get back up the order. Looking at how far everyone's split apart down there, I'm not sure what's possible for Fisher to pick up here. I'm thinking maybe getting around to perhaps 14th if they're lucky and do a lot of climbing. Oh no, actually I've just seen that Bock is about 24 seconds behind. I don't think Fisher can climb much higher than 21st.
Oh, Saristo on Daly. Didn't quite have the angle there, had to abort and go around the outside. That lost them a little bit of time, but a smart heads-up move by Oscar Saristo to not endanger the Carbon Fox Racing 97, and is able to just about avoid a detrimental move right there. I'm sure Daly's happy about that as well. He's had a rash of races where he's been rear-ended, and lucky to avoid it there. George Boothby, by the way, he is a-coming. Less than a second between him and Hutchinson. Is it a bridge too far to win this race? Maybe. We'll talk about it after Boothby catches and passes Hutchinson. How defensive is Hutchinson going to be? We talk about the points championship. We're several weeks out from the finale, but it doesn't matter. You got to get all the points you can here. Saristo still trying to make this move on Daly. Clearly has superior power in the 97, but excellent defensive tactics by Daly, going down to the inside, trying to cut off the I almost called it an Audi, the Aston, who is trying to take over 14th spot, and it works for Daly, able to keep that spot. By the way, I just looked up at chat for the first time in 10 minutes. You're making me blush. Stop it.
Yes, your fan club did arrive in the chat, Jesse Lee, and of course I'm a huge fan of you too. You know you'll be getting very similar compliments from me later on. Saristo still chasing down Daly towards Eau Rouge right now. Daly doing a great job at holding on, but has to do it for another 13 minutes. They want to hold on to that 14th position. Boothby still flying around the track, struggling a little bit in that final sector and the first sector as well, Jesse. I mean, the final sector's not bad, but Boothby definitely struggling in the first sector. Saristo swings to the outside there.
Oh, he's going to lose it!
Done it as Daly slides into the chicane, losing grip on the car, and they'll have to tuck back into 15th place, turn up the engine and fight again. We're going to have a race replay to see how this happened from Daly's perspective. Now you can see approaching the corner here that unfortunately the mirror is not working, so you cannot see Saristo lurking behind, but you can see him ducking into the right there. Saristo appears on the left, and Daly spinning, losing grip, allows Saristo to fly right through. John Daly not going to be happy with how that one turned out, maybe feeling the pressure a little bit, but going back to Boothby, now within that second, just 6/10 off Hutchinson. I promise you, Father Boothby, if he gets into first somehow and wins this race, I am bringing back Digby, the biggest dog in the world.
Oh dear, oh dear. What would I have to pay you to get you to read off an excerpt from that at some point?
Not a lot.
I'd absolutely love to do that. I'd absolutely love that. George Boothby, the man that we call George Digby. It was a naming error made by Tim Peck quite a long time ago that, I don't know, we here at RCI, we just fell in love with it. We just started calling him Digby internally, and now it's a publicly known thing that we call him George Digby. You got Father Digby, who I refer to as Father Boothby for many years, is now Father Digby, and then you've got obviously George Boothby, a father now. You've got the baby Digby as well over in the Boothby household as well. Garrett Fisher continuing his climb back up through the field. The only silver lining that I was going to mention earlier for Fisher and Pulse Sim Sport is, this car has top 10 speed, but it's gone wrong here. Bach has been spun. Was that contact with Fisher? We didn't quite see that. It certainly looks like it. Fisher slowing down a little bit as if to apologize. The front splitter cam, yes indeed, contact sins the GTR around, and that is not what Fisher had in mind there.
And it is not what Fisher would have wanted as well. The stewards will be looking at that because that is a contact spin. And whether they return the place or not, Jesse, they will be looking to put some sort of penalty on it. Now, of course, Fisher has slowed down. They'll return the position. That will mean that the penalty is slightly lighter on them, because if you return the position, then you don't get as harsh a penalty. But either way, Fisher's race has just gone from fairly bad to worse. As it seems, they're up into 20th, but will most likely be falling back down into 21st soon. But like I was saying, actually they've gone all the way back down to 22nd there, giving the position back to Bock, and Schroeder in the process as well managed to sneak through. But Fisher as well, like I said before, I don't think they're climbing much higher than that 20th place. You can see the gap between Smeets and Bock. It will update shortly. And the reason it's not updated is because it is rather huge. I believe it's 20 seconds, although we're going to find out it's probably bigger now. It's probably closer to 25, maybe even more. And again, it's still not updated yet, which just goes to show how big of a gap it is down there. But either way, Fisher's race started out so well, had them fighting in that top 6 spot for possibly a top 5 finish, and now it's looking like 21st, not going to help them in the championship. And you can see the times now in. Bock 32 seconds behind Smeets. Fisher, I don't think, is climbing any higher than 20th, if they can even get back up there.
10 minutes left in the race, and the battle for P2 is on. Hugo Merrells has extended their previous gap, 4.2 seconds to Hutchinson in P2, but the battle is for P2. Hutchinson just in front of Boothby. We ride on board the number 800 Ferrari, and you can very clearly see there's a little bit of a pace difference here. Boothby absolutely feeling it. These two have raced pretty much the entire race within a second or two of one another. It's looking like it's going to come down to that. No pressure out behind, nearly 9 seconds back to Valentin Berrier in P4. Jardier holding strong in P5. Samir Foch has caught up just a little bit, 1 second off the back of Jardier at the time being. Some people wondering why I call him Samir Foch and I don't say Foch. It's very simple. Foch is how you would say that name in French. He is Latvian, and I don't know what it would mean or how you say it in Latvian. Tim Peck thinks it's Foch.
Yeah.
I can't say that. My face doesn't twist that way. I revert back to the French pronunciation. In Polish, it is Foch, but I don't know if he speaks Polish. Well, he probably speaks Latvian, but I don't know how it's said. I've never talked to Samir, and he's never yelled at me for calling him Foch, so I've always done it like that.
Yeah, Samir's one of those drivers that has always been very, very nice, and maybe even a bit lenient probably with how we've said their name. Of course, Samir, if you are watching this, do let us know how to pronounce it, as Boothby goes for the inside of the chicanes, a slight contact, but they make their way up into second place, finally overtaking Hutchinson, who they have been hunting down since they first got overtaken about 15 minutes into this race. Boothby manages to get back up into that second position. A little bit of contact there, so not overly clean. We can see the ending of this from the rear of Boothby now, but either way, you saw on the chicane a little bit of contact there between Boothby and Hutchinson, and I don't think this fight is over yet, Jesse. Hutchinson will be trying to take that place back. You can see already coming down the main straight. They've just come out of Radillon, and Hutchinson trying to reclose that gap up, just using the slipstream to pull themselves closer to Boothby. But Boothby, since fixing that 1 second of damage, has been absolutely flying. And okay, I will renounce anything that I said about Boothby before. That 1 second meant everything to them, and it has absolutely changed how this track has gone for Boothby.
An excellent battle there and a couple of taps. And what does that tell you about a fight like that? That means that George thought that Hutchinson could have given him a little bit more space. Speaking of not giving the space, Martin Lawrence trying to go around the outside, trying to pin Alessio Mellis, or who are they racing? No, that's Morgan McCall. In fact, they're racing. They're trying to pin him down to the end. The apex of the corner, does that very nicely and is able to gain P9. The connection lost racing driver up into P9. Morgan McCall will take 10th place there. Well, it really wasn't left with too much option. What a power move by Lawrence. Speaking of power moves, Romain Thomas here getting a little bit racy with Wouter Billen for 12th place. Talked about Billen being a little bit further back than I expected on the start. He's silently climbed his way up into P12, looking to keep that. He's going to show the inside to Romain Thomas here, the Valkyrie Esports driver. No room there, has to fall back in line.
We talked about the Hondas at the very beginning of this championship, Jesse. Of course, we started out with Bathurst as our first race. Hutchinson and Billen there did very, very well in the Honda car. It proved to be the best car on the track as Hutchinson in the Honda managed to secure the race victory. We then questioned, though, how it would fare across the rest of the championship and whether it would continue to perform. And it looks like for Hutchinson, it's re-come up at Spa. Of course, Suzuka, it struggled a bit, which was a little surprising. We thought it would do okay at Suzuka, and Hutchinson really struggled there. But back on form for Spa has hopefully helped Hutchinson to secure this podium. Of course, Boothby is still within their sights, and they may be able to take this position back. There is 5 minutes and 30 seconds left in this race to do so. Samir Foch looking towards Jardier now. Jardier, who's managed to work herself up into 5th place. Barrier started to sneak away from Honzik, but it just means that Samir now can catch up with Honzik himself, and you can see the Ferrari approaching the rear of the McLaren. Will Samir have enough power in them to overtake Jardier? They've got to find it soon, Jesse, because although there's plenty of opportunities to overtake here at Spa, all of them take a little bit of setup. Of course, you need to make sure that you're closing that gap on the corners before. You need to make sure you're really gaining as much time as possible. You basically want to be almost touching the car ahead of you when you go into the straight without having to lift slightly so that you don't compromise your straight line speed. And it's a lot of setup to get the overtake to happen, which can be tough to do. So with 5 minutes left, the pressure is on now for a lot of these drivers that are just trying to get that final position. The pressure is on to help them make it. They need to make sure that these final 5 minutes, they are on the ball and that they can finally get those overtakes done.
Father Boothby reckons that the initial tap between Barrier and Boothby probably actually did affect the Ferrari quite badly. I mentioned that very early on, that 1 second doesn't sound like a lot, but certain cars in certain places, I know the McLaren is particularly susceptible to front and rear damage, and they just handle differently. I'm quite unsure about the Ferrari, but it is very possible that it affected that car quite greatly. And as Father Boothby pointed out, it's possible that they could have been fighting for a win today. It just wasn't really on the cards. This fight here has closed down. It was more than a second a lap ago. It was half a second, half a lap ago, and their side-by-side defensive line by Jardier down to the inside of the chicane. Might that be enough? It will be this time through. Just a couple of housekeeping points to keep you abreast of. 15-second penalty for car 78 for taking out the 114. As our old pal Ryan Gill would say, that's pretty much slam dunk. I don't think you would have expected anything besides that. Of course, Fisher gave the position back and then some. Fisher doesn't want to race like that. I think we know that very well. It just was an accident, but do the crime, do the time, as they say. Racing incident between the 171 and the 540. A racing incident between the 78 and the 114. Apparently 2 laps after the spin, they had more contact there, but deemed a racing incident. Warning for car 800 for an overtake with minor avoidable contact on the 726. I was quite curious what the stewards would say about that. Just a warning, no harm, no foul. And a racing incident between the 540 and the 171, and no further action between the 183 and the 42.
Hugo Morales has started this race on pole position. They have led from lap 1 onwards all the way up until the point that we are at so far. There's 2 minutes and 30 seconds left of this race, and it's looking very good for Hugo right now. Of course, things can still go wrong in that time. We hope for Hugo's sake it doesn't, and it's one of those tracks which can be a bit hit or miss with those personal incidents, Jesse. Of course, we look back to the start of the season where Malinowski was in the lead for the majority of the race, and within the final 15 minutes had an incident that sent them spinning into a wall and eventually made them pit as Mellis here goes for an overtake towards the inside of Seminara. They're now looking towards the outside for the next corner. Is it going to be enough to slingshot around? It looks like Mellis has just about got enough momentum here. They stay on the inside for the next corner, but it's going to now be back in the hands of Seminara as they approach the right-hander at the bottom here, and it's going to help Seminara to stay ahead as there's another right-hander just afterwards as well. Melis put up a fight for that 7th place position, just didn't have enough oomph to quite push themselves around, but now has a nice load of straights to try and get some slipstream here. Either way, got 1 minute and 30 seconds left to try and make something happen. Smearfo still chasing Jardier as well as they try and close down that gap, hopefully go for the overtake too. We've seen them already go for it once, but Jardier managed to hang on. Can Samir change that in the final lap here at Spa? And this is the final lap. After all, Hugo has crossed the line. They will not make it to the line before the 0 minute mark, which means if you want something to happen, Jesse, it needs to happen now. George Boothby has started to close the gap to Hugo, but won't be able to do it enough without an instant, which nicely segues me back into what I was saying before, which is instants can happen with the person in first, but Hugo right now will be doing everything in their power to make sure an instant doesn't happen, and will just be happy to come home in first place.
Last lap of the race, it's everything or nothing. How bad does Foch want this top 5 spot for the Ferrari Enjoyers race team? And how bad does Alessio Melis for the PST LFM car as they're running for this week? How bad do they want 7th place from Seminara? I don't know. A lot of Ferraris battling throughout the field today. This just being one of them that has persisted. Melis, not really known to be a driver that would overdrive the car. I wonder how forceful they would get. Needs to close in just a little bit if they want to hope of a last-ditch overtake. The same is for Foch, though admittedly Foch is way closer to Jardier than these two are. Boothby, though, has taken the fastest lap of the race, the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race. It's not officially sponsored, but if you would like your name or brand on the fastest lap award, you can inquire within. We would love to have that. Until then, it is the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race award. George Boothby. I think that pretty much confirms what it could have been for George, but what a day for Hugo Merrill's. A fantastic day. Started in qualifying, did everything right, executed the strategy, and is going to win for the Jean Alesi Esports Academy round number 3 of season 7 here at Spa-Francorchamps. A fantastic run. George Boothby coming home P2, battled all day, gets rewarded for it. Jade Hutchinson, another top 3, an excellent championship drive from them. Valentin Berrier with another impressive finish as well. Jardier for the 3rd race in a row, a top 5 for him. Foch in P6, Melis, Seminara, Lawrence, and Ripper will be your top 10.
And remember, everybody, you can vote for your driver of the day, the chat award in chat now. Just say who you think the driver of the day is, give us their number, why you think it should be, and we will obviously announce that on the stream. It's something we started in the first race of the season, and it's something we quite like to continue. It's always interesting to know who you think has stood out today. It doesn't necessarily have to be the winner, but of course it can be. Hugo has done an absolutely amazing drive. The rest of the people crossing the line now. Just looking at some of these orders, Saristo ahead of Daly as they come across the line. That's how that battle ended up working out, and Fisher will be able to cross the line in 20th position. Now it looks like everyone's been promoted slightly because Box up into 19th, but Fisher does have that 15-second penalty, which I'm sure will play in effect. Actually, though, they're a lap ahead of Schroeder at this point, so that will help them out. But either way, a disappointing end of the day for Fisher, who was probably hoping here for a much better result after their start. But Jesse, I've got to say, what a race we've had here today at Spa.
It was really tight at the top, wasn't it, Tim, all day long? You had Hugo, who was holding on to this very tangible lead, and Boothby, Hutchinson, and the like were all fighting, and even behind them, you had Berrier, Jardier, and Foch. That almost rhymed right there. And even behind them, Seminara and Melis, and then McCall and Billen, and all of them racing really hard, and inside the top 15 was absolutely excellent to watch. It's exactly what you hope you will get in a race like this. Spa almost never disappoints. The Ferrari domination continues, though. Hugo Merrill's your winner of the day and further complicates the championship going into round 4. I have no idea what the points are going to look like because of this. It's going to be quite interesting Indeed. Final cars coming across the line. Results confirmed, pending any post race penalties, though I do not think there will be any. Tim Peck, we asked the audience who the driver of the day was. Please vote with your chat and your keyboard. Tell us who you think the driver of the day is. Tim Peck, who's your driver of the day?
I'm a little torn, to be honest. There's a couple of drivers who I think really did start to stand out today. Barrier, of course, had a brilliant race. They were fighting through the field. Jardier as well started in ninth place, managed to put themselves up into fifth, and even had a scrap with Samir at the end, managing to hold on to that position. Of course, Hutchinson as well just did a great job at putting the pressure on Boothby early on. It's not something we see a lot. Of course, Boothby was suffering from the damage that they had, but you don't see George under pressure a lot, and Hutchinson managed to bring that today. So very proud of them as well. I think they could be a contender for driver of the day. We talked about the standings, Jesse, and how they were looking. If I'm correct, I believe finishing second and having fastest lap will mean that Boothby is still in the lead of the championship, but the win from Hugo and starting in that pole position, which grants them points as well, will absolutely help to begin closing up that gap. So it'll be interesting to see next week just how wide that gap is. If there even is a gap there, maybe they might be neck and neck. I don't know. I don't also think I can do the math for that on the spot. I'm more hoping that I can stall enough for you to do it, but of course, we'll see if that's the case. But either way, going back to who I think drive of the day should be, I don't know. I'm genuinely stumped. I know you hate me when I say this because it's always good to pick someone, but there are a lot of people who I think could be driver of the day today. And I think realistically, though, if I just look at it for a minute, Barrier for me showed me what Barrier can do. Barrier is one of our drivers who is known for just showing up, being very consistently good towards the front of the field, mixing things up a bit. And for me today, they had a couple of great battles that show me why they are in one of those top spots. So I'm going to say they're my driver of the day. What about you, Jesse?
Well, I'm going for the milk toast option on this one. Normally, I try not to pick the winner of the race, but you can't argue. Hugo did a fantastic job. May have not been the fastest car, didn't need to be, just needed to be the most consistent, and was. Won the race, did everything they needed to do. No pressure. I say that. They only won by 4.7 seconds, but calm, cool, and collected as you like. Put their name in the championship hunt. Hugo Merrills.
Well, looking at the chat, driver of the day, we do only have 2 votes this time round, one of which is you, Jesse, which means driver of the day will be going to Jordan Daly. Because unfortunately for you, as much as I would love to give you an award, Jesse, you are not a driver in today's race. That being said, Jesse, you may actually take commentator of the day from me. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, commentating this race with you. And I look very much forward to next week, where I believe we're going to Kailami. I will just double check that now, but going to Kailami next week, I'm sure we'll keep this championship interesting. We have 2 more rounds and a big battle for first place. They could go several directions. We're not going to Kailami next week. We're going to Indianapolis. So we're using one of the new American tracks in the next week's race. And I've got to say, I'm very excited to see how it turns out. I think going into today's race, I was very much of the opinion that I'm sure a lot of people were as well. Without being biased, I was of the opinion that, okay, Boothby join this championship in race 2. Looks like they're going to start to run away with it a bit, but Hugo Morales started to restore a bit of hope to everyone else, manages to bring home a brilliant victory today that will help push the fight forward. And I've got to say, I think this may be a close one. Come race 5, Jesse, I will not be surprised if there are several people batting out for the win.
Right, you are. It's going to be pretty much deadlocked. George Boothby will be your championship leader, I think, going into round number 4. There's no reason why they shouldn't be. But Hugo, who was in P5, they may jump as high as P2. They'll be virtually tied with Hutchinson. Jardier, of course, finishing in the top 5 as well. Garrett Fisher will fall outside the top 5, but still, it did nothing but tighten it up even further amongst the top few. Everybody in the top 5 still in it with a couple of rounds left to go. Luckily, I don't have to learn a new language last week because I can already speak English, and I know how to say hello and welcome in English. I might do it in an Indiana accent though, a little bit for you.
Yeah, you've got
coming up. Two rounds left in the championship, Indianapolis and Kailami in South Africa to decide a champion. We thank you all for being with us, and it's been very enjoyable to interact with all of you in chat today. Thank you so much. We hope that you enjoy your weekend. Next broadcast here on RCI TV will be on Monday, the start of the Deutschland Masters Championship, live for you Monday evening. Do bear in mind, still time to sign up and do pre-quali for that series before it starts. You can join any series here at RCI mid-season by signing up on the website racerci.com, RACE RCI.com, and doing your pre-quali prior to that week's race. The 24 of Monza, I think it is, coming up in 1 weekend's time. That will not be live streamed. But beyond that, I do apologize for the sirens. Something's burning down in the town next to me. Do apologize for that.
Oh, God.
But it's a fire truck. It can only be one of two
Hugo's
things.
celebration.
That's what it is. They're having a parade. But the 24 in 1 week's time, still time to sign up your team for that. GT3s in that event. It's going to be fantastic. Wish you all luck entering that. And of course, a big thank you to our partners that make this race and every race possible. AK Informatica for providing our server solutions. Of course, Driver 61, you can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code. Several of our admins here at RCI have used Driver 61's driver coaching, and it has proved to make them a quicker racing driver. And of course, when making purchases of quality sim racing hardware at fanatec.com, please use our affiliate link when doing so. It doesn't cost you a penny, and it tells them that we sent you. It helps us with things like server cost when you use it. Please and thank you. And on your way out tonight, like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT action. Next broadcast, of course, on Monday. Go to racerci.com. Check out all the upcoming and currently going events. Sign up. We would love to see you on the track. Tim Peck, final thoughts on the day.
I think it's been a brilliant race all round. Spa can go a number of ways, and although there was a bit of action on the track that could have gone better, I'd argue that this was a very good race all round from Spa. Of course, you've got John Daly ended up confirming they climbed from 25th to 15th in the race. They are your driver of the day, and they did some brilliant racing all round. We had a lot of action at the front as well. Boothby, Hutchinson, Samir, Jardier, Barriere, all battling it out at the front to see who will come out on top, especially in the early stages of the race too. I've got to say, Jesse, this championship is shaping up to be really exciting, and I cannot wait to see which direction it goes from here.
Couldn't agree more, partner. We'll be back with you in 1 week's time from Indianapolis, Indiana, the Indianapolis Road Course for round number 4. Until then, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Ryan Mawson. On behalf of the stewards, the admins, and the broadcast team, we thank you for watching today's broadcast. We'll see you next week. And until then, have a good night.